And I call the member for Clark.
Deputy Speaker, I move that this bill be now read a second time. Deputy Speaker, the bill permanently bans the export of live animals for slaughter from the 1st of July 2023. In the interim, it puts in place additional welfare safeguards to ensure animals are treated humanely before this ban comes into place. Deputy Speaker, this bill contrasts sharply with the policies of the government and the opposition. Members would be aware that the policy of the Liberal and National parties is to promote and to celebrate the live animal export trade in all its forms. The Labor Party, to its credit, does, or at least did, have a policy opposing the export of live sheep to the Middle East. However, the Labor Party remains committed to the export of beef cattle to other areas, in particular Indonesia and throughout East Asia and North Asia. Deputy Speaker, my apologies, Deputy Speaker, that was a mystery. The phone is on silent. Deputy Speaker, this is the 5th time the bill has been introduced, and it remains necessary. The most recent time I tabled this bill was in December 2019. Since that time, there have been a number of significant and worrying developments. For example, in June 2020, the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment granted an exemption to the Northern Summer live export ban, allowing approximately 35,000 sheep to be shipped into the scorching Middle Eastern summer on the vessel the Al-Kuwait. The government's after-voyage report states that 1,000 sheep on this voyage were exposed to a score 4 on the heat stress scale, which is the highest level on the scale. This means the sheep were panting with open mouths and tongues protruding. A score 4, Deputy Speaker, has never before been recorded in one of these reports. By the way, I had moved a motion in federal parliament in June last year to block this exemption and to prevent the Al-Kuwait sailing, but this motion was blocked by the major parties, who both voted against it. Deputy Speaker, just in August last year, breaches of the export rules were revealed in Jordan, where local sellers dragged Australian sheep around by one leg and advertised the animals for illegal home slaughter for the Eid sacrifice. Footage taken by local investigators for Animals Australia, as well as market sellers at 10 sites across Jordan, shows sheep with Australian National Livestock Identification ear tags being forced to jump off the backs of trucks, being dragged by one leg and bundled into cars for home slaughter, which is banned under Australian animal welfare rules. Moreover, Deputy Speaker, footage was obtained by Animals Australia showing the inhumane slaughtering of Australian cattle in Indonesia last year, again, including footage of extremely distressed and in pain cattle being dragged across the floor, having their throats cut without stunning and bleeding to death. The animals in the video from Animal Australia are missing their national livestock identification tags, and their treatment is clearly in breach of Australian export rules. And then, Deputy Speaker, in just November last year, the new Australian standards for the export, November this year, new Australian standards for the export of livestock were due to come into effect from 1 November. The changes would have given cattle more space to lie down and better access to food and water troughs on live export voyages, but these were blocked by the Agriculture Minister David Littleproud at the last minute, allowing live cattle exporters to continue to operate under existing stocking densities for at least the next 6 months. Deputy Speaker, it's not as though we've needed those three examples from June this year 2020, August this year 2020, November this year 2020. It's not as though we didn't have enough evidence already of the cruelty of the live animal export trade. For example, way back in 2003, members would remember the Cormo Express, a vessel where 6,000 sheep exported from Australia perished aboard that vessel as it floated around the Middle East trying to find a port to unload them. And then, of course, in 2011, the ABC Four Corners program, the shocking revelations in that program about the cruelty being experienced by Australian beef cattle in Indonesia. 2012, the revelations from Pakistan, about 7,000 sheep were being destroyed. And, Deputy Speaker, who can forget the images we saw on the television of Australian sheep in Pakistan being buried alive as recently as 2012. And then, of course, Deputy Speaker, in 2017, the Awazi Express, and the revelations that more than 2,500 sheep perished on that vessel, and the graphic images we saw released by Animals Australia of sheep literally drowning in faeces on the decks of that vessel. Deputy Speaker, clearly the live animal export trade is systemically cruel. It's not in Australia's economic self-interest, and it doesn't have popular support. And the only way to end the cruelty is to end the trade. And in doing so, we will also be acting in the best economic self-interest of this country as we restore the red meat manufacturing industry and employ thousands upon thousands of Australian workers. And it's not as though other countries, in particular in the Middle East and Indonesia, it's not as though the consumers in those countries won't purchase processed Australian meat, chilled and frozen. They already do. In fact, we already export more in value sheep meat chilled and frozen to the Middle East than the value of the live sheep we ship there. Deputy Speaker, it is a myth perpetrated by or perpetuated, I should say, by the industry and the government that Islam demands live animals. They do not. And we are already exporting enormous amounts of chilled and frozen processed red meat into Islamic countries. It's a myth that there's no refrigeration in these countries. It's a myth that the industry is engaged in some sort of altruistic exercise to feed the poor. And Deputy Speaker, once we've shut down the live animal export industry, we need to also turn our mind to animal cruelty in all its other forms in this country. We need some sort of independent National Office of Animal Welfare to crack down on the cruelty inherent in the industrial manufacture of food within our borders, in the beef cattle industry, the sheep industry, the dairy industry, the pork industry, the poultry and egg industries. And then we also need to turn our mind to the cruelty that is to be found in the racing industry, the thoroughbred racing industry, the trots, the racing dogs. And we need to clamp down on the cruelty within the pet industry, the puppy farms, the kitten farms, etc. Indeed, we have an animal cruelty crisis in this country, Deputy Speaker, and the government is doing nothing about it, even though it has the levers at its fingertips. Deputy Speaker, I'll now invite the member for Warringah to say a few words in my remaining 2 minutes. The member for Warringah who will be seconding the bill. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order. Is the motion seconded?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to second the Live Animal Export Prohibition Ending Cruelty Bill 2020.